I'm Heather, 68. I'm sitting in my penthouse, sipping a glass of fine wine, and looking out at the city lights. It's been a year since my life took a dramatic turn, and I'm still in awe of how things have changed. It all started last Christmas. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my morning coffee, and watching the snow fall outside when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my son, Ryan. "We just want a peaceful Christmas with the family. Don't come." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I read the text 3 times, hoping it was a mistake, but it wasn't. I'd been a single mother for 45 years, working 2 jobs to raise Ryan and his sister, Lily. I'd sacrificed everything for them, giving up my dreams and desires so they could have a better life. I'd spent months planning for Christmas, buying gifts, preparing recipes, and imagining the joy on my grandchildren's faces when they open their presents. And now, with a single text message, all my hopes and dreams were shattered. I remembered the early days, when Ryan was a little boy, full of love and gratitude. He'd write me letters, thanking me for the care packages and the money I'd sent when he was in college. He'd tell me how much he loved me and how proud he was of me. But as he got older, things changed. He married Sarah, a woman from a wealthy family, and suddenly, my little apartment wasn't good enough. My homemade gifts seemed cheap compared to her family's expensive presents. My stories about Ryan's childhood became embarrassing instead of endearing. I tried to be understanding. I knew that Sarah came from a different background, and I didn't want to cause any problems. I tolerated her snide comments and her dismissive attitude because I loved my son and I wanted him to be happy. But it was getting harder and harder. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying not to say or do the wrong thing. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. For a moment, I hoped it was Ryan calling to apologize. But it was my neighbor, Grace. She and her husband, David, lived in the penthouse of our building. They were wealthy, but they were also kind and generous. They'd invited me to join them for Christmas dinner, and I'd initially declined, not wanting to impose. But after Ryan's text, I found myself saying yes. That night, I dressed up in the black dress I'd bought for Ryan's wedding, but had never worn again. I put on my mother's pearl necklace, the only piece of jewelry I owned that looked expensive. When I arrived at Grace and David's penthouse, I was greeted with warmth and kindness. They introduced me to their friends, and I found myself engaging in lively conversations about art, literature, and philanthropy. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. Over dinner, I met a woman named Isabella, who was involved in a literacy foundation. She was impressed by my insights into the challenges faced by working families and invited me to join the foundation's board. I was hesitant at first, not sure if I was qualified, but Isabella convinced me that I had a lot to offer. I agreed to consider it, and as I left the penthouse that night, I felt a sense of hope and possibility. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of clarity. I realized that I'd spent my entire life making myself small for the sake of others. I'd given up my own happiness and fulfillment so that my children could have a better life. But it was time for me to change. It was time for me to start living for myself. I logged into my investment account, an account that Ryan and Sarah knew nothing about. 3 years ago, I'd inherited a fortune from my great-aunt, a woman who'd made a fortune in the stock market. I'd kept the inheritance a secret, not wanting Ryan to become dependent on my money. But now I realized that I'd been wrong. I'd been so afraid of being seen as a bank account that I'd allowed Ryan to take me for granted. I decided to take control of my life. I hired a personal shopper, a decorator, and a real estate agent. I bought a new wardrobe, a beautiful penthouse, and a luxury car. I started traveling, visiting places I'd always dreamed of going, but had never had the opportunity. I joined the board of the Literacy Foundation, and I found myself making a real difference in the lives of others. As my new life unfolded, my family started to take notice. Ryan and Sarah began sending me texts and emails, asking me how I was doing and inviting me to family events. At first, I was skeptical. I knew that they were only interested in me because they'd found out about my money. But as time went on, I started to see a change in them. They seemed more respectful and appreciative, and I began to believe that they might actually care about me. One day, Ryan called me and asked if he could come over and talk to me. I agreed, and when he arrived, I could see that he'd been through a lot. He looked tired and worn out, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He told me that he and Sarah were having problems and that he needed my help. He asked me for a loan to help him pay off his debts and keep his business afloat. I listened to him, feeling a mixture of sympathy and anger. I knew that he'd made some bad choices and that he was responsible for his own problems. But I also knew that he was my son and that I loved him. I told him that I was willing to help him, but not in the way he was asking. I offered to pay off his debts, but only if he agreed to get some financial counseling and learn how to manage his money. I also told him that I was setting some boundaries. I wasn't going to be his financial safety net anymore. I wanted him to take responsibility for his own life and make his own decisions. Ryan was initially resistant, but he eventually agreed to my terms. I could see that it was hard for him, but I knew that it was the right thing to do. I wanted him to learn from his mistakes and become a better person. Over the next few months, Ryan and I worked together to get his life back on track. He started seeing a financial counselor, and he made some changes in his business. He also began to appreciate me more, and he started calling me more often just to talk and see how I was doing. As the holiday season approached, I was still unsure about whether I wanted to spend Christmas with my family. I'd had so many hurtful experiences in the past, and I wasn't sure if I could trust them. But then, my granddaughter, Emily, called me. She was 20 years old, and she'd always been close to me. She told me that she missed me and that she wanted me to come to Christmas. She said that she didn't care about the money or the presents. She just wanted to spend time with me. Her words touched my heart. I realized that I'd been so focused on the negative experiences that I'd forgotten about the positive ones. I decided to give my family another chance. I agreed to come to Christmas, but on my own terms. I told them that I didn't want any drama or stress. I just wanted to spend a peaceful and enjoyable day with my loved ones. Christmas morning, Ryan arrived at my penthouse with a thermos of coffee and a bag of pastries from my favorite bakery. He looked different. He seemed more confident and more at ease. He hugged me tightly and told me how much he loved me. We sat in my living room, looking out at the snow falling over the city, and talked. We talked about his business, his marriage, and his hopes for the future. He asked me about my foundation work and my travels, and I could see that he was genuinely interested. As the day went on, more and more family members arrived. Lily and her husband, Tom, came with their 2 children. Sarah and her parents also showed up. There were no more snide comments or dismissive attitudes. Everyone was kind and respectful, and I felt like I was truly part of the family. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but smile. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, the woman who'd been so afraid of being alone and so desperate for love and acceptance. I'd been willing to sacrifice my own happiness and dignity for the sake of others. But now I was a different person. I'd learned to love and respect myself, and I'd surrounded myself with people who loved and respected me in return. I knew that there would still be challenges ahead. My family wasn't perfect, and there would always be disagreements and conflicts. But I was ready to face them. I was stronger and more confident than I'd ever been, and I knew that I had the power to create the life that I wanted. So, to anyone out there who's going through a similar situation, I want you to know that there is hope. You don't have to settle for a life of unhappiness and disappointment. You have the power to change your circumstances and create a better future for yourself. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and to set boundaries. And most importantly, don't forget to love and respect yourself. You deserve it.